Hi guys, how are we all doing? So, I spoke to a lovely parent last week and something came up, and I said I'm going to do a video about this. So, here I am recording a video about this. Now, this is about the 11 plus maths exam or test papers and what level your child is required to know. I was completely shocked that people are still giving such terrible advice and telling other parents that their children are working on GCSE maths material. If you are doing this to your child who's preparing for the 7 plus, you must stop immediately. Stop immediately. Okay, so for those of you who are new to the channel, my name's Joycelyn Akufo. I'm the Managing Director of Geek Score Tutoring. We specialise in preparing for children for their 11 plus exams, and we do this online and in person at our venues in Beckenham and Lewisham and Thornton Heath. So, back to today's topic. Oh my goodness. Can I ask you to please just like, comment and share this video, because I think it's one of the most important videos that I've recorded for the channel, because I can only imagine the emotional impact for so many students who are being forced in year 4 and in year 5 to learn GCSE content like trigonometry, circle theorem and all of these things that are irrelevant to their exam and will be irrelevant to their secondary school experience, at least for year 7, 8 and most likely 9, although yes, some schools may start trig in year 9, but it's not relevant for their exams, honestly. So before we carry on with this amazing video, please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications so that you will get notified every time a new Geek Score video goes up. Enjoy! Let me just break this thing down. So yes, it's true that the grammar school selection tests and the independent school entrance exams have maths content that go beyond the Key Stage 2 syllabus, as you will, if you will. That's very true. You know, you only need to look through the packs and compare them to SAT's maths papers, and you'll start to see, you know, some differences. You'll see some similarities on the easier questions, but you'll see some differences. So you can look at like the GL packs, for example. GL is obviously one style of paper. You've got the SEM familiarization papers, but of course they would never put their hardest questions there because they want their exams to be preparation proof. I believe that is probably one of the big issues, to be honest, because parents think that, you know, usually children come out of SEM tests saying how hard the paper was because they're given so many maths questions to complete in such a short space of time. So by default, it's difficult. But what we hear is that the paper is really hard. And so many parents compare that to their experience of something like the Kent test or GL paper, where the students get used to the style of questions. I'm not saying it's easy because of this. It's still work for them, you know, but GL also gives a sensible amount of time for students to complete the papers. And so when they hear that the SEM papers are so hard, they just assume that their child needs to learn, you know, at such a ridiculous level like the GCSE exams. That's not true. if you have an 11 plus tutor and they've told you that your child needs to learn GCSE content, find somebody else, because they do not know what they're talking about. And, you know, I'm sorry that I've had to be so firm about that, but this is one of the problems that I see all the time. You know, so-called tutors who do not understand the 11 plus system, but they know that there's a demand for 11 plus tuition, so they jump on the bandwagon and they actually don't know. And then you've got other tutors who, you know, supposedly should know about the system, but they teach students at such a low level within Key Stage 2, basically. You've got one extreme on one side, another extreme on the other side. It's very important, you know, that you keep an eye on what your child is doing, irrespective of whether you're paying for tuition or not, you know. At Geek Score, I see it as a three-way process. It's an agreement between the child, us, and the parents. You know, we need to all work together in order to make the journey as seamless and as, can I say, enjoyable, you know. As a former survivor of the 11 plus, I'm not sure that would be the word I'd use just then, you know, but just as seamless a process as possible, basically. So your child does not need to know circle theorem. Your child does not need to know trigonometry, okay? Your child does not need to know inequalities. Your child does not need to know Pythagoras. Your child does not need to know, you know, sine and cosine rule. Those are for GCSE exams. For the 13 plus, depending on the school that your child is preparing for, you know, and how academic that school is, some of the topics that I've just mentioned, they would need to know, and that's fine. But for the 11 plus, the biggest part of their maths needs to be a solid foundation on all Key Stage 2 maths. So if your child struggles with, let's say, a year 5, year 6 CGP maths book, then you know that there's a bit more work to do, because they need to be working at a higher standard than that, meaning that they shouldn't struggle with the year 5 and year 6 books in year 5, basically. You know, they need to be working at least a year ahead, but the core part of the exam, which would enable them to pass, would be covering Key Stage 2 maths, you know, so they need to really know that. Another area that you need to really hone in on, and I discuss this a lot in my videos, times tables. Since COVID and children coming back to school, it's just been quite interesting to see how low a standard so many children are working at. And parents have been bewildered because, you know, at the same time, there haven't been any reports from any of the you know, counties about reducing the standard for the grammar school exams. And why would they? Because they know that, you know, largely students are tutored for these exams anyway. So why would they reduce the standard? They know that they don't need to, really. But times tables, if your child is still umming and ahhing, making mistakes, counting on their fingers and so on, they are not going to pass the exam, not because they're not bright enough, but they would just, number one, be working very slowly. Secondly, they'll make mistakes along the way with their times tables, which will create an incorrect answer. And thirdly, some of the topics that require times tables knowledge will be harder for them to understand, because they won't be able to easily see how we've changed 4 to 16, for example. Well, we times it by 4. A child who isn't confident in their times tables would constantly face these blocks all the time because of that. So you want to really ensure that they have all of these foundations in place. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I need to cover. So yes, so basically these core areas are what you really need to hone in on. You really need to hone in on. Don't focus on GCSE, even Key Stage 3. You need to know what you're doing, you know. So just to put it into perspective anyway, Key Stage 3 maths in years 7, 8 and part of year 9 basically repeats everything that your child has learnt from about year 5, and it adds extra content, and it adds maybe the next layer of complexity. So let's just say that in year 4, learning fractions, let's just go on to adding fractions. Year 4, your child may just learn how to add fractions that have the same denominator, you know, so 1/10 plus 3/10. So we know that that would be 4/10, and depending on, you know, what the school has in mind, your child might not learn that they need to simplify that answer by, you know, using the highest common factor, okay, to simplify, basically dividing. So 4/10, dividing the top by 2, so numerator by 2, denominator by 2, and you're left with 2/5. Some children won't be taught that in school, so they'll just write their answer as 4/10, but they'll get to year 5 and then they'll learn about simplifying, you know, and then in some schools they'll wait to year 6 before they're given a question with mixed numbers, so 2 1/4 plus 1 3/5, for example. And you know, so basically what you need to do is to make sure all of those types of areas are covered. And you would know this because you'd go through, you know, like a year 6 book, for example. In year 5, your child should be able to, if you're prepping them for the 11 plus, you need to get your skates on. And, you know, I know that some parents will think, oh my goodness, that's too much stress. It really isn't, in the sense that when you, at Geek Score, if we teach children how to add fractions, we don't just say, oh, you're in year 4, we'll come back in 2 years and teach you. That's not what we do. We actually teach them how to do all of it step by step so that it's covered, and so that they've got enough time to actually practice and familiarize themselves with it. You know, schools don't tend to do that because, you know, it's all tick box exercises and so on. And, you know, learning objectives, and it's so rigid. We do not do that at Geek Score. So, you know, some parents are bewildered because you think, hold on, when I was in year 5, I could do this. But part of the issue is the impact of, you know, the pandemic and the impact on schooling of children. I'm seeing that generally, yes, many children are at least a year behind. And for the 11 plus, that puts them about 2 to 2.5 years behind. But it's not unattainable, you see. It's just about having some consistency and, you know, making a concerted effort to tackle one area at a time, build your child's confidence in that area, add on another area, keep revising the other areas, and so on, you know. But the last thing that you want to do is work on topics that are irrelevant to the exam, and, you know, which means that time is being focused on areas that will never be tested, and then, you know, the core areas that need the practice don't get as much practice as they need. Okay, so yes, it's true that some independent school exams have very, very peculiar maths papers. St Paul's Girls' School is an example. If you go onto their website, I challenge you to go onto their website if you're unfamiliar with the school. And, you know, hopefully they won't take it down because I said something, you know, but if you go onto their school website and you look for their maths sample paper, the last time I was there, it had paper A, B and C. I'm sure it was just 3, but, you know, maybe it's 4. paper A starts off looking like maths, and then, they have some reasoning questions, basically. And that paper is very similar to the Dulwich College 11 plus maths paper. When you get to paper B, you are literally looking for your decimals, your fractions, percentages, and so on. They don't exist. And then by the time you get to paper C, even some parents are bewildered, because you're just wondering what on earth are they actually trying to do, to these 10-year-olds. And then clearly for a school like that, your child has no hope of passing if you're, sort of just depending on, what they're being taught in school, because the maths there is not your national curriculum maths, let's put it that way. That school is very peculiar and unique in their maths papers. If you look at the other London schools, I challenge you to look at the JAGS and the Alleyn's papers, and I know that the papers are for Alleyn's are very accurate to the exam, because my daughter sat their exam, and my son sat their exam, and many of our students have sat their exams. And the feedback is that yes, it's similar to the sample paper, but the point I'm making is that they're actually testing the children on straightforward maths. Of course, it's not an easy exam per se, because it's under time conditions, and you've still got the word problems and so on. You've still got the academic scholarship style questions and so on, which are usually the high level maths questions, but they are maths questions, or at least maths reasoning questions, unlike schools like St Paul's, that is just ridiculous, in my opinion. But it clearly works for them, because they're one of the top 10 schools, so it's obviously working for them. So apart from that, when you look at even St Paul's, you will not see GCSE questions on there. I know that there are many year 11s who will not be able to do the St Paul's paper at all, let alone easily, and yet it's being given to children in year 6 to do, so it just confirms again, there is no GCSE. If you're talking about GCSE on the foundation paper, which is basically, give or take a handful of topics, very similar to, because obviously it covers things like fractions, percentages, decimals, and so on. A few linear equations here. That's the foundation school exam. Yes, but there are topics that are irrelevant, leaf diagrams, stem and leaf diagrams. Why would any 10-year-old really need to spend so much tuition on that? It's such a waste of their time. So my biggest tip to parents is really work on the key stage 2 topic areas. That's going to get your child the bulk of their score in the exams, and then the rest of it will be an added bonus. There's no point doing the high level algebra focus questions if your child can't do the bus stop division or long multiplication, or they can't add decimals together. It just doesn't make sense. You need to start from there. Now, if you're stuck, Geek Score offers tuition, obviously in our centres. We also provide online tuition. So it doesn't really matter where you are in the world. We've even got students in like China, in Nigeria, in Ghana, Dubai, and so on. So where you are doesn't matter to us any longer, even though we have our 2 centres, one in Beckenham, one in Lewisham. Please do not be deceived by tutors who make this exam's content look impenetrable. If you do, your child will probably be taught things that will just create stress, and they won't enjoy the process. because those contents are not for this time in their life, basically. Rant over. Rant over. I just want to thank you for watching the video to the end. This is one of the longest I've done for some time, but I hope it's beneficial to you all. And please comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye.